Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ascend Occupational Medicine Consulting, where we bring in heavy hitters from all across the workers' comp space. And I am so excited to have my friend today join us. This is Mr. Mark Pugh, and he is the founder of Work Comp College. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Cadet. It's always great to chat with you. I just mentioned you're the smilingest person I have ever met on planet Earth, so really excited to spend some time with you.
So am I. So am I. Well, for people who are new to this channel and what we're trying to put forth, Mark, could you tell us a little bit about Work Comp College?
Absolutely. It's kind of a culmination of everything I've done for the past 30 years or so in the property and casualty work comp industry. I have the tagline, the RX Professor, which I got when I first started talking about the overprescribing of opioids in 2003. And then I adopted the tagline agitator and educator as I started talking with legislators and regulators around the country, adopted and leaned into kind of biopsychosocial and medical cannabis and virtual reality and all sorts of other different alternative modes of treatment. And so I've been teaching out there for a long time, been educating out there for a long time. And a friend of mine at a SACA event in November of 2021 approached me and said, I don't think that claims adjusters, newer claims adjusters in work comp are getting the kind of training that they need in order to be fully successful. Back in the day, 10 years ago, you literally went to Boston, to Hartford, to Austin, Texas for 2 or 3 weeks of immersive training. Got everything you need to know about how this particular company works, but also how work comp works itself and your part in the puzzle. And that just hasn't happened. The training obviously is one of the first things that gets cut. And so it really resonated with me, having been in that, arena of doing webinars and live events and all different things. It's like, yeah, I really think that not everybody is getting the type of attention, the type of training from an onboarding standpoint. And then I brought in a longtime friend of mine, Bob Wilson, who's been advocating to completely rename workers' compensation to workers' recovery, because people focus on the word compensation, not on recovery. And so this really resonated with him as well. And so what started out as kind of hey, we don't think new claims adjusters get the training they need, to pretty much anybody in work comp, whether it be claims professionals or leadership positions or HR or risk managers or salespeople or operations people or attorneys or clinicians or ombudsmen or regulators. It's been really interesting to see this expand to not just new claims adjusters, but long tenured claims professionals and people who don't do claims on a regular basis, to understand the big picture about what work comp is and really kind of embrace this noble purpose. Because if you think about workers' compensation, you could think of it as an antagonistic system that's really kind of a gotcha, and we're kind of us versus them, and everybody's kind of protect their own and whatnot. But in reality, we're the only two constituencies within the system that count are the injured employee and the employer. And the only thing that's really pertinent is getting that person back to work, or at least back to function where they can find something that can bring them that vocational capability. And so when you think about that, it's a really noble purpose in order for us to all be working as a team, working together. Claims advocacy, we adopted the workers' recovery kind of mindset, the biopsycho. So just kind of leaning into this, these injured employees are individuals, they're humans, they have unique needs. We need to serve them. Most of them are going to go back to work without much muss and fuss, but the ones that are complicated, we really need to lean in and throw the kitchen sink at them as quickly as possible, so we can get them back to their full income, back to their comrades at the office, back to their family, back to their function, all those different things. So what started out as kind of this unique not unique, it was a premise that people weren't getting the training, has led into pretty much anybody involved in one way, shape, or form in work comp can benefit from that big picture view and leaning into that noble purpose, so we can bring that next generation, the young folks like you're a lot younger than me, bring the young folks in to our industry that we need to replenish so that we can continue and keep this industry vibrant and vital.
That is so amazing because one of the complaints that I've heard is no one ever showed me how to do this. This is very confusing. And to know that there's like a centralized hub where not just the adjusters, but anybody who is remotely related to workers' compensation can go and get timely training, I think is super important. You actually released a post not too long ago that you've expanded into even more states. So, can you talk a little bit about the state specificity of the programs that you offer?
Yeah, well, the Workers Recovery Professional Certification, which is our flagship product, it's 64 courses, about 50 hours of content, spread over 8 schools of discipline. It's meant to be a standard of practice. It's meant to be really applicable wherever you operate. It's not state specific. It is kind of general in nature. It's a combination of hard skills, technical skills. How do you determine compensability? What is a lawyer doing from a mediation standpoint? What is an Ahmed doc looking for in that first visit? How does legislation turn into regulation, turn into case law, turn into policies and procedures? So, but it's also got soft skills. We've got an hour-and-a-half course on emotional intelligence. We've got courses on change management and leadership. We talk about motivational interviewing and empathetic communication, different things like that. So those are best practices that are really applicable everywhere. Anybody who knows work comp realizes that every state is different. They may use some of the nomenclature may be the same, probably some of it's different. Maybe some concepts, generally speaking, are common across states, but how you actually apply them and use them are different for states. So we leaned into the state-specific module where we go, okay, now that you've got the standard of practice of what it's like to actually do comp in with the big picture view, with the advocacy mindset, what is it like to actually do claims in Georgia versus California versus New York versus et cetera? And so as of the date of this taping, December 6, 2023, we've got 13 states that we've launched, working on another 10. Our goal is to have all 50 done by the middle part of 2024 to kind of build again, the foundational component. If you need to do the job of a claims adjuster, understand the standard of practice, what you would expect to happen from a claims advocacy standpoint, on top of the forms, the case law, the regulations, who's the chairperson of the different committees and stuff, all those technical skills associated with state. So we're building kind of this all-inclusive package. And then we've got the Advanced Training and Education Center, which is a continuing education place that we're constantly going to be creating eclectic conversations like the course that you helped produce with Judge Langham, that's going to continue to kind of push the narrative forward that we need to continue to think of things differently. So it's again, from the original concept of we don't think new adjusters are getting the kind of training. Now we're creating this really big tent of all sorts of different content from different perspectives and feeding different needs associated. So from a product development, which is, I started in IT, so I'm used to software development. Then I moved into product development from workers' compensation. I can't think of anything more exciting to leverage my personal experience and the collective experience of our trustees, of our deans, of our faculty members, our supporters, our partners. Just, it's really community driven. It's not been the three of us. It's been the three of us kind of leading this community of like-minded people and creating stuff as you see needs. I wake up every morning like, man, I get to go to work.
Right. And what an amazing perspective to have, because so many patients within workers' comp don't wake up and think, oh man, I get to go to work today. Mm-hmm. And so we want to serve them and the workers who love their jobs at the highest level. And what I love about what you're talking about in regards to the community is there's so many players in workers' comp. It's very easy to get in our silo and not really know what the other folks are doing. So the lecture that we did with the judge, I absolutely loved, because even though I'm writing the MMI reports and I'm sending those off to a judge, I've never gotten to talk to a judge and get their perspective on workers' comp. So I think people being able to feed into that community and see those types of conversations and make connections is super important and is one of the ways that workers' comp is going to get better.
Hmm.
Now, you talked about, emotional intelligence and some of the psychosocial aspects of workers' comp or some of the curriculum that are presented in the college. How do you think that those conversations around emotional intelligence and things going on in the background, how does having an awareness of that make workers' compensation better or the services we provide better?
Well, it's interesting. I'm obviously speaking your language when you talk about a biopsychosocial approach. That's your that's your whole approach from a clinician standpoint. When I first started talking about cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT back in 2010, 2011, people looked at me like I had 11 heads. And it's like, we're never going to do that. We're opening Pandora's box by asking what happened to them as a child, or, do they have past substance abuse issues, or, different things that really have nothing to do with a meniscal tear. But people started to understand that it was not a diagnostic test. It was more a behavioral, it was a treatment to help people uncover things that created barriers to recovery. And those could be psychosocial, they could be physical comorbidities, it could be that they have constantly been modeled poorly by their family members, by their community about how to be resilient. Maybe they don't have resilience because of things that they've encountered as a child or as an adolescent or even as an adult, and they just feel like they're constantly victims of circumstances. So understanding how important that is beyond the meniscal tear, and I mentioned this oftentimes that in work comp, we see two individual injured workers, same condition, same treatment, same competent care, really no complications. One person gets back to work and function very quickly. The other person never does. And it becomes this catastrophic claim, not from a physical standpoint necessarily, but from a financial, because they never exit the system. And the best thing you can do in workers' comp is get that injured employee out of the system, because the system will create dysfunction, will create aggravation, will create all sorts of problems. The best thing that can happen for them is to exit the system. So what was the difference? It was what was happening between their ears, what was happening at home, which is a phrase I coined a decade ago. What happens between the ears and what happens at home has as much to do with your willingness and ability to get better as what's physically wrong with you. So taking into account that whole person is really important. Now, talking about that a decade ago, again, was like 11 heads. It's like, no, there's no way we're doing that. But I think the industry has started. A lot of people have been talking about claims advocacy from the podium. There's more and more discussion about that. But I'm working on a project that is going to create a template for people who want to adopt a claims advocacy model in their organization. And we've got a great group of people that are working on that. And what we're discovering through that is that there's a lot of success stories of people that have adopted that empathetic communication style, that emotional intelligence, the advocacy mindset, where that injured employee is at the center of everything. They've adopted that, and actually their total cost of claims has declined. So, for those people that get good with that heartfelt, I'm doing the right thing, and I got that squishy feeling, and I can go to bed at night, the emotional intelligence is like, of course I'm going to treat this person like I would treat my mama or treat my brother or treat my best friend. For the other, the other sided brain people who only focus on dollars and cents and a binary yes or no, and is there a return on investment? Well, what you see is the total cost of claims reduced because you have less litigation, you have faster return to work, lesser indemnity, the ability to settle the claim faster, again, get them out of the work comp system, which is what's actually best for the injured employee. And so I think what I'm finding and discovering is that there are employers and TPAs and carriers and other people that are actually adopting this and seeing the financial benefits beyond being able to go to sleep at night and feel like you've made a difference for that soft, squishy part of the brain. The hard nailed yes or no binary analytical side of the brain, they can get value out of it too, because they see the return on investment by, for example, not fighting over the next 5 PT visits. They got 12 PT visits. They've completed that regimen. They're making functional progress. The worst thing that can happen is to send the next 5 through pre-authorization, fight over through peer review and reconsideration and appeals over 2 to 3 weeks, all the while that employee is deconditioning, getting ticked off because they're not getting what they need. And they're seeing the commercials from Larry the lawyer on the TV because they're there all the time saying that you need me to help represent you. We have snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat, or actually more defeat out of the jaws of victory, by not continuing that and doing the right thing, communicating with them clearly. Most injured employees have never heard of workers' compensation. They don't know what a claims examiners do. They don't know what investigating their claim is. That sounds really bad. If there's surveillance, all that kind of stuff, they just know that they got hurt and they want to get back to work. Well, a really smart employer will communicate with them very clearly. Here's what to expect. Here's who's going to talk with you. Send them a text to help them, to let them know that you're thinking about them. If they're going into surgery, text them beforehand going, I'm hoping everything goes well. Let me know how it works. After that, send them flowers. Communicate with it doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes effort and dedication. And those simple kind of things, along with maybe some more complicated things, can really inculcate that claims advocacy kind of mindset. And so now you'll see lower litigation because injured employees don't feel like they're being taken advantage of or overwhelmed, and their employer, their TPA, their carrier is really taking care of them and looking after their best interest because they're engaging with them with that emotional intelligence. And so it's been really interesting to see this swing from over my dead body 10 years ago to people recognizing this actually makes sense, not from just a doing the right thing, but from a financial repercussions of actually reaping return on investment by doing the right thing.
That is exactly what so many of us are trying to do and love to hear. There have been so many cases where you can talk the patient down off the ledge from wanting to sue the employer simply by the way that you show up in the exam room. Mm-hmm. And then when you've got your other teammates, the claims adjuster, the nurse case manager, who are also rooting for the patient and have emotional intelligence and are claim advocates, it can totally turn the whole picture around. So I think what you're saying is something that is super important. And if we could go to every clinic that takes workers' comp and we could just deliver the message, mm-hmm. which is what we're attempting to do through this recording, because I think everybody who touches a workers' comp patient needs to hear that.
Mm-hmm. And we all need to work as a team. So you could have a really emotionally intelligent provider who has great bedside manner and helps explain it, and the claims adjuster could completely screw it up by ignoring the diagnostic request or denying the PT or whatever, and vice versa. The adjuster on behalf of the employer could be doing a great job in communicating with them, and they get a provider who's very steely-nosed, spending more time looking at the EHR and noting and logging their notes, as opposed to literally physically touching the person, connecting with them and helping with them. So everybody needs to be on the same page. And that's really what we're trying to preach, is that this is a team sport. There's individuals, there's different disciplines involved, but this really is a team sport. And ultimately, to get the touchdown is to get that person back to as close to function as they had before injury and as close to their full-time job as they had before. That's the touchdown. We just need to matriculate down the field as a team, and everybody do their job.
That is amazing. I love that analogy.
Well, it is football season, so top of mind, right?
Now, Mark, you've been in the game for a long time, and you've been able to see how different organizations and businesses run their work comp programs. What do you think one of the top 2 or 3 biggest pitfalls are?
Well, I think you mentioned one of them before, is the silo approach, where you've got not only a silo within, say, an employer, but a silo amongst their vendors. So they have different service providers that are providing bill review or DME or PBM or, a variety of different services, PT networks, the provider networks, et cetera. And they don't necessarily, they're not operating as a team. And maybe it's because they don't have that quarterback, back to the football analogy, or the head coach that goes, this is our plan. This is our game plan. This is what we're going to do. This is your role. This is your role. This is your role. This is how we're going to communicate once to another. If the defense throws up something that we weren't expecting, we're all going to do, an ad lib, and we're going to figure out, okay, now it's play two, and this is what play two means. That kind of leadership really needs to be there. So I think the biggest pitfall is you get a variety of different people working on this, but they're not communicating clearly together, and they don't necessarily have a cohesive game plan. This is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. And that really is set really by the employer themselves, and the other people that they empower. I think that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls. And another pitfall certainly is most people in comp fell into it. The vast majority of people did not choose comp. Comp chose them. And it's kind of like Hotel California. You just can't find the door to get out. And so, there, you develop a passion maybe over it, over time. But this wasn't your choice. And a lot of careers that people are very passionate about, they specifically selected. They did their due diligence, like you. They went to medical school for gazillion years, and then the armed forces and all that. I mean, there wasn't anything kind of a surprise to you. You had a specific plan, and you worked it until you achieved your goals. Oftentimes, that's not true for work comp professionals. They kind of fell into it. It's not necessarily a career; it's just a job. And when you think of things as a job as opposed to a career, you don't think long term. You don't think as a member of the team moving forward. So you have kind of this, you don't have the attitude that you would if you chose it as opposed to it choosing you. And the other thing I would say is that historically, insurance in general, property and casualty for sure, and work comp for definite, is that we have not necessarily been open to new things in the past. Things have always been the way. If you look at the statistics, work comp is a profit cash cow for property and casualty insurance right now. They lose money on auto and liability, and they make money on work comp. So, there isn't a lot of incentive to go, hey, let's change things, let's revise things, because actually it's pretty cool. If you just keep doing what you're going to do, it's basically printing cash. So what's the incentive to do things differently? What's the incentive to change the outcomes, to change the narrative? So we've got to get over that. And I think part of it was COVID. I think we surprised ourselves, I think, in how quickly we were able to adapt. I don't think anybody would predicted work comp could basically not miss a moment and switch from everybody being in the office to everybody being on their couch with Doritos and the dog and the TV going while you're trying to answer emails. Nobody would have predicted that we could have done that basically overnight, but we did. And so we proved to ourselves that we are adaptive, that we can make change. And then the advent of artificial intelligence, that has always been a buzzword. Predictive analytics has been out there before that. Big data was before that. So AI is all the thing. Chat GPT came up, and now everybody's an expert on everything. And so now the huge discussion about how does AI change how we do things, how quickly we do things, how do we maybe get rid of the mundane tasks that claims adjusters do and allow them to focus on the human-to-human interaction. And so we have been forced through technology to accept the fact that our consumers, the injured employees, almost expect an app that they can download on their phone and recognize immediately when their next indemnity check is coming, or any outstanding issues, or make sure that they can communicate. That's just how they communicate with everybody else. Why wouldn't they communicate like that to work comp? So I think technology has been forced upon us to some degree, and that is requiring us to change. But that adaptation and that evolution has not necessarily been a part of our DNA. So the bad news is that is kind of our history. The good news is, between COVID and technology, we can't not evolve. We have to evolve, or we're going to die. And so, that has forced us to change. And I think that's overall a very good thing.
Well, you said so many good things here, particularly about how a lot of claims professionals didn't necessarily choose workers' comp. And so the attitude surrounding the job is a lot different. If you had anything that you would suggest to leaders and workers' comp and how they can influence the space in which adjusters work, what would you say would be their first move for creating an ideal environment for claims adjusters to really thrive?
Well, I'm reminded of the cartoon, what if we invest in our people and they leave? And the alternative is, what if we don't invest in them and they stay? So that's always a conundrum. If you embrace professional development, if you actually listen to your employees and give them a voice and let them be a part of the process, which is what the new generation wants, right? They all want to. I mean, the broad strokes is they all want to be trainee on Monday and CEO on Tuesday. That's a very imprecise broad brush, but they do want to. They do want to feel a part of the process. They do want to feel heard, and they want to feel that they matter to the organization. So you could lean into that, and you create this rock star, and then that rock star goes, you know what, I can make more money, or I can have a better impact, or whatever on other places. Employers are always going to have to choose whether you want to invest in the relationship with your employees. If you want to be like a family as opposed to just a strict hierarchical organization, if you want to have a very fluid communication style, if you want to invest from a professional development standpoint, if you want to do all that, the chances are potentially that you create a rock star that leaves you, but they're going to be replaced by another rock star wannabe that sees how you invest in people and how you treat your employees. So I think from a leadership standpoint, if you're into that stoic, hierarchical, hey, you got to go through three layers of bureaucracy before you can talk to someone who can actually influence and make a decision, and just do your job and, stay focused on that. That certainly is an option, but I got to tell you, the 1950s are calling you back, right? Because that's just not how businesses and employees and customers want to be treated. Richard Branson with Virgin Atlantic and Virgin whatever, I mean, he's created a variety of different things. He specifically said, I'm not as interested in treating my customers well as I am treating my employees well. And Southwest Airlines did the same thing. If we treat our employees well, they're going to treat our customers well. So don't start with customer service as the goal. Start with servicing the people that work alongside you first, and then they're going to feel valued, and they're going to project that value onto your customers, and everybody's going to be happy. So I think from a leadership standpoint, if you're into that, Mad Men, stoic, hierarchical organization, that may work for you, but chances are you're going to die on the vine, because people are not going to want to join your organization. You're going to have retention issues. It's just going to be a problem. So, and I'm not necessarily advocating for, okay, the CEO is an undercover boss and he or she's going out there, or everybody is in an open table and the CEO is sitting right next to a trainee who's trying to make a call. I'm not advocating for, chaos. But I am advocating for an open, engaging kind of communication with your team, and making sure that they feel valued, feel that they're heard, and understanding that sometimes their feedback is not helpful because they don't have context, they don't have experience to go, really love the idea, but now's not the time, or here's some additional context you need to understand that recognizes the fact that your idea is not going to work. And then the ones that are great go, man, we would have never thought of that if we hadn't invited you to the table. We're so excited to hear that feedback. That's a great idea. Why don't you help us figure out how to implement it and empower them to take that forward? So I think that's the kind of organizations that are going to thrive, whether it's work comp, whether it's insurance, whether it's technology, whether it's government. God forbid government actually have anything that works. But how do you engage from an organizational standpoint? Because not everybody is old like me. The people that are in the workforce are younger generations that have different expectations. There are a lot of digital natives that are coming here that don't know the rotary phone like I do. They don't understand that not everybody could be microwaved, or not everything could be microwaved back in the day, right? I mean, they don't understand I remember when I looked forward to getting home so I could listen to the voicemails that were left on my phone at the home, knowing that I had missed out stuff because I had no way of communicating with them in between. And I took quarters and dimes with me in a car in case I had to use a payphone in order to remember the phone number that I had to call to help some. That's completely lost on a 23-year-old. So their expectations of how organizations work, of how they're treated as employees, how they treat their customers, how all that kind of stuff works is completely different than what I grew up with when I got my first professional job in 1980. So we got to lean into that and understand that we're serving not only our customers, but we're serving our teammates, our employees, our associates, and how best to do that in a manner that really embraces their value, tells them when they're not right, but tells them when they're right as well, and helps give them that empowerment so that they can be a big part of the solution.
And I think that brings us full circle is as we are showing honor and respect to our employees, we're also showing that same honor and respect to the injured workers that we're caring for. And so as we continue to treat other people the way that we want to be treated, I think we'll go really, really far. And so, Mark, as we bring the interview to a close, if there are employers listening and they're like, oh my goodness, I need to get my adjusters or my entire work comp team over to get some more training, where can they reach you? Where can they reach Work Comp College?
Well, we were smart enough to name our company after our website or vice versa. So it's really easy, workcompcollege.com. My email address is really simple as well, mpew@workcompcollege.com. You connect with me on LinkedIn, Mark Pugh, agitator and educator there. If you want to hear more about my experiences, I've got my own website called therxprofessor.com. So there's a variety of different ways. I don't know if you're gonna release this to millions of people, I'm probably not going to share my mobile phone number, but that's plenty of ways to communicate with me and understand a little bit more about my personal experience, what we have built at Work Comp College, and what we're trying to do from a missional standpoint to change the narrative, to change how we view work comp into that noble purpose approach.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. I'm going to put all your contact information in the show notes. And Mark, we appreciate you and everything that you all are building at Work Comp College.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you. Really appreciate your contributions as faculty, and I'm a big fan of what you're doing at Ascend, and anything I can do to help, definitely keep me in touch.
Thank you so much, Mark. See you next time, everyone.